Number 10. Johnny Depp in The Lone Ranger. Johnny Depp and Disney have had a long and fruitful relationship together. Between 2005 and 2015, Johnny Depp was Disney's go-to boy when they needed a character to be played and to be iconic. In 2013, he took on the role of playing a character named Tonto, a Native American man who acts as the sidekick to the titular Lone Ranger. The first issue people had with this project was of course Johnny not being a Native American man. The second was the portrayal of his character. In the film, Tonto spends a large portion of the movie sporting a rather lifelike bird on his head, which many found to be making fun of traditional headdresses. When the backlash began to plague the film, the director and Johnny spoke out in defense of the project. According to Johnny, he did not want to play the same character from the original TV series, rather develop his own take on the classic character. The headdress is adorned with a real dead bird because his version of Tonto is known to be an eccentric and strange man, claiming that this was a character choice to show how wild that he was. The film was released and it was a massive flop at the box office, but it seems that it wasn't Johnny's performance, as he continued to work well after that, right up until his ex said that he went poo-poo into bed. Number 9. Benedict Cumberbatch in Zoolander 2. Benedict may be well known for playing iconic characters like Sherlock Holmes or Doctor Strange, but in 2016 he decided to make a cameo that was in poor taste, man. It was not a good choice. The popular and zany comedy flick Zoolander, starring Owen Wilson and Ben Stiller, received the sequel treatment 15 years after its initial release. The sequel followed Ben and Owen being pulled back into the model world, where they team up with Interpol after becoming the targets of a sinister plot. The film was not well received, but featured fun cameos from stars like Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, and Benedict Cumberbatch. Benedict's cameo was a bit different than everyone else's though. He played a character named All, a non-binary fashion model. For anyone who doesn't know, non-binary refers to someone who does not identify as male or female and usually uses the pronouns they, them. The film decided to just roast that concept over and over again instead of respecting everyone's choices to their identity. The writers decided to give Ben some very cringy and strange lines, and his choices as an actor were difficult to understand. He played the character as some kind of a magical, mystical figure, like being non-binary makes you a wizard or something. He received massive backlash and was almost cancelled, but thankfully his role was overshadowed by the general trash of the project, and he starred in Doctor Strange for the first time, so everyone just kind of forgot that this happened and moved on. Number 8. Eddie Redmayne in The Danish Girl. Eddie has had a few regrets over his career, but today we're talking about the one that almost got him canned from Hollywood forever. In 2015, Eddie starred in the film The Danish Girl, portraying the character Lily Elby, considered to be a pioneer among the LGBTQ+ community, as the first woman to ever receive a gender-changing operation. The film received critical acclaim and was nominated for several Oscars. However, the audience reaction was just a bit different. Many viewers took issue with the fact that Eddie is not a trans woman, believing that the role should have gone to someone that identifies as such. Redmayne delivered an incredible performance according to his co-stars, but the cast and crew understood why there was so much backlash towards his character. In fact, Eddie himself spoke about the situation not long after the Oscar ceremony and claimed that this project was a mistake. He made the film with the best intentions, but in retrospect he probably should have passed on this one. Thankfully, due to the crew and cast acknowledging these issues, Eddie's career remained uncancelled. Number 7. Scarlett Johansson in Ghost in the Shell. Ghost in the Shell was a 2017 live-action movie based on the popular anime film of the same name. The film starred Scarlett Johansson in the leading role of Motoko Kusanagi, a Japanese woman. Hang on, that can't be right. Oh yeah, no, that is. Okay. The character Scarlett is based on was originally voiced by a Japanese woman and of course was drawn as such, so when it was announced that Scarlett would be the lead, fans immediately flooded the movie with backlash. It wasn't just Scarlett though. Once again, Hollywood was taking a Japanese property and neglecting to cast almost any Japanese actors in significant roles. Despite the massive backlash and whitewashing on Hollywood's part, the film was released and it went about as well as you would expect. The movie itself was not great. It had some terrible CGI, the performances just felt wrong on all counts, and it just overall made people want to walk into the projection booth and throw on the original 1995 movie instead. In fact, this film received so much hatred that Scarlett was forced to drop out of another project where she was set to play a trans character for the fear that one more bad decision would land her on Hollywood's cancelled list. Thankfully, there have only been a handful of live-action anime movies since 2017, but it's looking like Netflix might be on track to change that pretty soon. Number 6. Jake Gyllenhaal in The Prince of Persia. Jake has worked with Disney on several projects over the years in everything from Bubble Boy Boy to Spider-Man Far From Home. He's been a consistently solid performer with only one little blemish on his record. Jake was cast to portray the titular Prince of Persia in a 2010 live-action movie based on the 1989 platformer of the same name. In case the title didn't give it away, the prince is meant to be a Persian man, which Jake is not. The casting department decided to remedy this situation by simply darkening his skin a little bit and giving him a beard. Like, come on, Disney, was there nobody else you could think of? Like, I love Jake Gyllenhaal as much as the next guy. This man is the chaotic good that we all need in our lives. But like, nobody looked at him on the shoot day and went, something doesn't feel right about this, guys. Disney was hoping the film was going to launch a new franchise in the vein of Pirates of the Caribbean, but it ended up costing the studio millions of dollars and almost cost Jake his career. Thankfully, he came out and apologized for taking on the role. He was just a fan of the original games and was excited to play the character. So, cancellation diverted. Number 5. James Corden in The Prom. The former Late Late host has branched off into movie roles a few times, starring in projects like Into the Woods and Cats. In 2020, he snagged the part of Barry Glickman in the musical The Prom, playing a character who is openly gay and playing the character with every single stereotype imaginable. As a straight man, many people were calling him out for his eccentric, over-the-top portrayal of a gay man. It would be one thing if he was consistently flamboyant, but he seems to pick and choose which moments to be more outgoing and which moments to dial back. According to critics of the film, James was the most offensive and horrifically bad part of this movie. Following the release of the project on streamers, his fate was almost sealed entirely. In fact, James is one of the few people on this list who actually were cancelled for being so bad and offensive in their role. With his late night show being taken off the air and him currently sitting at home wondering when that next gig is gonna come. Number 4. Sacha Baron Cohen in Borat 2. Borat was released in 2016, and in case you haven't seen it, here's a brief summary. Jesus. Kazakh TV host Borat is dispatched to the United States to report on the greatest country in the world. The film was shot as a documentary/hidden camera style show. Anyone involved in interviews or one-on-one moments didn't actually know that Borat was a fictional character. While initially the film received massive backlash, particularly from the people of Kazakhstan, it's since been praised as a comedy cult classic and for bringing the tourism industry back to the country of Kazakhstan. Now, it's no surprise that a sequel was eventually made, and while it took a few years, Amazon stepped up and dropped Borat's subsequent movie film in 2020. The sequel was just as fun as the first one, only this time the crude humor was amped up to 1,000,000. Seriously, if you are squeamish at all, do not watch this movie. However, Sasha was almost cancelled by a group of personal pew-pew activists in Washington. During a segment, Sasha is pretending to be a country musician at a rally when he starts singing something that I can't repeat because the same thing might happen to me. Basically, he was for everything that these people were against. So, guess what happened? Guess what? They aimed at him. That's right, a crowd of people just turned on him and he was forced to hide in an ambulance, where he stayed for almost half an hour before finally being able to pull out. Thankfully, nothing bad happened and he was safe and sound. Now, I know that had nothing to do with him actually being like cancelled, but it's a neat story, and thanks to YouTube, being cancelled can mean a lot of things that I would need to bleep out. Number 3. Tilda Swinton in Doctor Strange. The Ancient One is a Marvel Comics character who first debuted in 1963. Now, if you are not someone who reads comics, then you probably didn't notice or care about this one, but unfortunately Marvel fans are loud and love to be right. The character was drawn as an old Asian man with a big white beard and continued to maintain that appearance for a very long time. Until 2017, when Tilda Swinton was casted to play the live-action version in Doctor Strange. Her version was bald and, according to the director, Celtic in origin. When the news of her casting was announced, many hardcore Marvelians were quick to claim whitewashing on Marvel's part. In fact, the hate was so hardcore that there was an online petition going around getting signatures of people who planned to bog down the reviews with purposefully bad scores, which would have just made this movie look terrible. However, Marvel actually listened to their fans, and CEO Kevin Feige released a statement claiming that Marvel had no ill intentions when casting Tilda and now realized that they handled the casting poorly. Tilda herself praised Marvel for speaking up and acknowledging their mistake while simultaneously apologizing for her part in the controversy. It seems that when you fess up to something and apologize properly, that the world forgives you. The film released and fans were pleasantly surprised with her performance. While still not a great move on Marvel's part, her character has only appeared in 2 movies so far, and the controversy seems to have died down. Number 2. Daniel Craig in James Bond. He likes some shaking. not stirred. Daniel has been playing the super spy since 2006's Casino Royale and has appeared in 5 movies, with his most recent flick being delayed and eventually released in 2021. Daniel may be loved by fans now, but when the news first broke, fans were extremely disappointed, and it was all due to his physical stature, of course. Many fans of the original series claimed that Daniel was too short and that James didn't have blonde hair, while others were simply just nervous about his ability to carry an action sequence. Greg was upset with the fans, but he admitted that there wasn't much that he could do apart from deliver a stellar performance. The public outcry of the time was so loud that the studios were extremely nervous about the ticket sales, but thankfully their nerves were calmed after the first 10 minutes of the movie, when it was obvious that Daniel was about to be the James Bond for a very long time. With the 5th entry rumored to be his last, who knows who the next James Bond might be? My vote is Seth Rogen. Number 1, Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder. Alright, here is an example of a man who did something terrible in a movie, but once people found out why, it was all chill. For those who have not seen this movie, I recommend it to anyone that is a fan of outrageous and raunchy comedies. This is not a family movie. Good lord, this is not a family movie. Directed by and starring Ben Stiller, the movie followed a fictional film crew attempting to make a gritty war movie, but they're accidentally dropped into the middle of an actual conflict in Vietnam. The cast was stellar. It included the likes of Jack Black, Jay Baruchel, Tom Cruise, and of course, Robert Downey Jr. Now, Robert played a character named Kirk Lazarus, who is a 5-time Oscar-winning Australian method actor who gets casted as an African-American staff sergeant named Lincoln Osiris. You see where this is going? Kirk undergoes a controversial pigmentation alteration procedure to darken his skin, something that he intends to stick with until after he has done the DVD commentary. Now, when the trailer was released and RDJ was spotted in blackface, it was no surprise that people were extremely confused and a little bit angry, like were we about to cancel Robert right when he started playing Iron Man? Well, despite the backlash and the initial shock, once people saw the movie, the message was very clear. Robert wasn't playing himself putting on the face, but rather playing an actor who chose to put on the face, being a decision that his character made and not himself. The bit is actually addressed several times by the only black lead of the film, Brandon T. Jackson, and in the end, Kirk realizes what he's doing is super offensive, and he doesn't need to pretend to be someone that he's not just to be a good actor. The movie was meant to be a parody of Hollywood, and in the end, fans really just enjoyed the movie so much that the backlash died down basically immediately. Number 10, Amanda Bynes. Amanda Bynes first got us cracking laughing when she starred in the Nickelodeon series All That, which was the Saturday Night Live style kids show featuring various actors in sketches that honestly held up very well to this day. Eventually, she was cast to star in her own sketch series named after herself, featuring former All That co-stars and newbies like Josh Peck, Drake Bell, and Taran Killam. Amanda moved from Nickelodeon to the silver screen with massive success, starring in comedy hits like She's the Man, Easy A, and Hairspray. Her career seems to be skyrocketing, which is why it was so strange when, in 2013, she announced on Twitter that she'd be taking a break from acting to focus on herself, claiming that being a celebrity just wasn't all it was cracked up to be. But it turns out that was not the case. You see, around the same time, she had been arrested for a DUI and was dealing with some serious legal drama. And it seems that, much like many on this list, Amanda blew off some steam by just tweeting about all the people she hated. She called out everyone from Canadian treasure and rapper Drake to the president at the time, Barack Obama, and his wife Michelle. She called people ugly, talentless, and she just kind of posted rant after rant with seemingly no reason. The rant, combined with her reputation, caused her career to instantly be cancelled. She was pulled from studio projects and has since spent her time trying to work on her mental health. Number 9, Will Smith. Alright, you guys all know this one by now. In 2022, Chris Rock was hosting the 94th annual Oscar ceremony when he decided to make a little joke about Jada Pinkett Smith and her hair loss. Immediately following the joke, Rock stood in confusion as Will Smith made his way to the stage. He adjusted his jacket, took a firm, strong stance, and just smacked him right across the face. Initially, this was seen as a planned joke between the two, but Will then began shouting several times at Rock to keep his wife's name out of his flippin' mouth. Well, I didn't say flippin', but internet rules. Chris handled the situation. He kept his cool, he laughed it off for the cameras, and he brought out the next award presenter. Unfortunately, an hour later, Will Smith won the Oscar for Best Actor in a lead because he played Richard Williams, who is the father of tennis superstars Venus and Serena Williams. During the speech, he gave a half-hearted apology for his actions before claiming that the whole thing was due to his months of portraying the father on set, leaving him with an extreme paternal sense to protect his family. But the world just watched Will Smith smack one of their favorite human beings live on the air, so you can imagine his career suffered a little bit. He has yet to make any new movies or star in anything other than his wife's talk show, which is also cancelled too, so there you go. Number 8. Lizzo. It was recently revealed that a lawsuit has been filed against the famous pop singer Lizzo, accusing her of creating a toxic work environment and mistreating her background dancers. The accusations range from fat-shaming her crew to forcing them to eat strange fruit from strange places. One of the dancers, Crystal Davies, who is a part of the lawsuit, was fired for secretly recording a meeting between herself and Lizzo. The meeting was about the dancer's performance on stage recently and Lizzo's apparent dislike of the weight that she had been gaining, claiming that she wasn't committing to her role. According to the plaintiffs, Lizzo made them work ridiculous hours, including up to 12-hour rehearsal days, and one of the dancers recounted an experience of having to use the washroom and being forced to do it in her pants while rehearsing. So she didn't lose any time. Like, come on, Lizzo, if someone has to use the bathroom, let them go. It probably took longer to get that lady a new change of clothes than it would have taken her to just, take 5. When the news broke, the world collectively turned on Lizzo and believed every single word that these women were saying. Now, while Lizzo continues to deny the allegations, her career gets worse and worse. Several of her live stage shows have been cancelled, her music's been pulled from radio stations, and there is an investigation taking place, so not good for Liz. Number 7. Lindsay Lohan. Lindsay stole our hearts in her Disney days, starring in movies like The Parent Trap and Get a Clue, and her career only seemed to be rising from there, being in several cult classics like Freaky Friday and Mean Girls as the main character Katie Heron. Unfortunately, her career took a bit of a step in the wrong direction when she was arrested in 2007 for driving under the influence of a controlled substance, for which she only served 84 minutes in jail. Yep, that's it, just 84 minutes. Despite this, the jail stint was enough to have her career ended in an instant. Any and all projects that had her name attached were rewritten or canned entirely, so no Herbie sequel for us. She then spent the next few years trying to scrape together something to keep her career going, starring in low-budget horror movies like The Canyons or the comedy movies like Scary Movie 5, and I do mean comedy loosely. Not only was her acting poorly received, but the stunt had pegged her as a difficult and unpredictable person, so no work for Lindsay. She made a recent comeback to the acting world in a significant role in a Netflix movie though, so here's hoping there might still be some hope for Lindsay. Number 6. Britney Spears. In 2007, aka Britney's meltdown year, she famously posted a video of herself holding clippers in a barber's chair, missing, most of her hair. The person who cut her hair kept it and quickly attempted to auction it off for $1 million, which sounds crazy, but there's some weirdos out there who call that a bargain. Following the shaving, she made her way to a tattoo parlor where the artist asked her what had happened to her face. After being swarmed by photographers at a gas station in LA, she went on a rampage wielding an umbrella and swinging it over and over again at one of the cars, attempting to smash their windows. In fact, she also hurled expletives at anyone and everyone who had cameras, eventually launching her umbrella towards the crowd. This was the main incident that landed her in a psychiatric hold. The entire night was captured by multiple people, and the moment that the photos were released onto the world, her career was over. A court ruled in 2007 that she was unfit to control her own finances and granted that power instead to her father, who was a no-no juice enthusiast with a sweet tooth for expensive things. Thankfully, that has since ended, and Britney seems just a little bit better than she once was. Number 5. Winona Ryder. These days, Winona is known as the mom from Stranger Things, but back in the day she was a rising star in the world of Hollywood, starring in several classic flicks over the years like Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands. But in 2001, she did something that tarnished her career for almost 18 years. Winona was out and about one day shopping at a posh store in Beverly Hills. Ooh, look at me, I'm getting so many fancy things. Video footage from that day shows Winona slowly gathering a pile of items, like literally wearing one of the hats that she's gonna steal. Thinking that she had pulled off the heist of the century, she began to walk out of the door when the manager stopped her, but noticing the massive pile of stuff in her hands that she most certainly did not pay for. She swiped over $5,000 worth of clothing, so I guess those Beetlejuice checks just ran out real fast. She was charged with felony grand theft and possession of a pharmaceutical, apparently holding some illegal antidepressants that many think might have had something to do with the situation. The moment the footage hit the news cycle, her career was over. She had already finished filming Mr. Deeds with Adam Sandler, which ended up being one of her last big roles, until stepping back into the spotlight in season 1 of the hit Netflix series Stranger Things. Number 4. Sharon Osbourne. 2 years ago, on the popular talk show The Talk, host Cheryl Underwood and Sharon Osbourne began to discuss the topic of racism amongst the recent firing of Sharon's personal friend Piers Morgan from Good Morning Britain over a series of comments that he made towards the former Duchess of Sussex. Sharon went off and began aggressively defending her friend, asking Cheryl what Piers said that made him a racist, and then she went on to say that she was being put in an electric chair, and due to her connection to Piers, that she herself must be a racist. She went on to clarify that she did not support his comments per se, but she did support his right to free speech. But he used that speech to say bad things, so maybe we don't support that. She then asked Cheryl over and over again how she could be racist. What did she do? What did she say? Cheryl then signed off for a commercial break before Sharon let out some choice words. And when they returned, the tension almost seemed worse, and the conversation just continued to escalate. Eventually, Underwood was able to get her point across and calm Sharon down, but the moment was put on air and Sharon was immediately cancelled. Her fans collectively cringed at the comments and begged that the studio would fire her from the show, which of course they did. Number 3. Roseanne Barr. In the late 80s, Roseanne starred in a sitcom titled after herself, and she starred alongside Hollywood heavyweight John Goodman in a series that followed the couple's everyday lives as a working-class family. The show aired for about 230 episodes and eventually got cancelled in the mid-90s, but it was revived in 2018 as the same wholesome content just for a new generation. But unfortunately for Roseanne, sitcom producers have Twitter, or X as it's called now. I don't know. Her show was quickly cancelled over a few hours after Barr posted a tweet about Valerie Jarrett telling the world that she was the product of Planet of the Apes and a certain brotherhood having a baby. She later apologized for the tweets, but the damage was done. ABC Entertainment President Channing Dungey said in a statement that Roseanne's Twitter posts were abhorrent, repugnant, and inconsistent with their values. Again, values. These people really love their values at the studios. Barr actually defended her tweets, saying that they were not racist, but they were in fact a joke. Hey Rosie, those can be the same thing, doesn't make it any better. In this instance, if she had just kept her comments to herself, she might have been okay, but the internet is instant and forever, so bye Rosie! Number 2. Milli Vanilli. In 1989, German-French dance pop group Milli Vanilli was on top of the world. The band had released its North American debut album, Girl You Know It's True, which climbed the Billboard charts and went 6 times platinum. The success also earned the group its first Grammy Award nomination and win for Best New Artists the following year. However, one Connecticut concert was all it took to shatter the phenomenon of Milli Vanilli. The same year, the group were set to record live on MTV at Lake Compens, a venue filled with 20,000 fans. As the group took to the stage to perform its seminal hit, Girl You Know It's True, there was an issue with a hard drive that caused the backing tracks to skip, jump, and repeat, exposing that Milli Vanilli had actually been lip-syncing the song. The moment shook fans and was the exact instant that canceled their careers for good. In fact, their music producer Frank Farian admitted that Fab Morvan and Rob Pilatus never sang on their records ever. This, of course, caused the Grammys to revoke the award that the group had just won, while the crew tried to start a new career under a new name. Ultimately, that failed. And at number 1, Kanye West. Kanye West was a billionaire for a brief period in his life following his successful ventures in both fashion and music. At the start of 2019, he had a baby, he was happily married to Kim Kardashian, and he was about to drop some of the most racially fueled and homophobic tweets ever released into the world. Now, I'm not allowed to quote anything that he said because this video would get removed from the internet. We wouldn't want that, would we? Just to sum it up, his tweets were just to sum it up, everything he said was horrible. Okay, just leave it at that. His tweets were just the beginning, as the aftermath would lead him to losing his fortune, his family, and his career. With just a few clicks of a keyboard, Kanye started the domino effect of his own demise. Any and all clothing brands created by Kanye, including his shoes Yeezys, were removed from shelves. Kanye's sponsorship from Adidas went into the toilet as they wanted nothing to do with the most controversial man in the world. His wife Kim had already filed for a divorce, but she had then gone public with her relationship to SNL alumni Pete Davidson, which just must have felt like extra squeeze of lemon juice right into his open heart. Number 10. Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan has always divided TV audiences, but he gained new notoriety after taking on the Duchess of Sussex. The host of Good Morning Britain abruptly left the show from broadcaster ITV after questioning whether Meghan Markle was being truthful when she told Oprah Winfrey that she had dark thoughts of self-harm before stepping back from her duties as a member of the royal family. Morgan's comments sparked a backlash and triggered an investigation by Ofcom, the country's media regulator, which received a record 57,100 complaints about his remarks. Despite leaving the show just drenched in shame, he did try to keep his career going by moving to another news source, only that one's more like one of those online news sources, you know the ones I'm talking about. Number 9. Chris Harrison. Chris was a longtime host of the popular reality show The Bachelor and its female counterpart The Bachelorette. Chris was forced to permanently exit the show after coming under fire earlier this year for defending a contestant's past racist behavior. Harrison, who has hosted the popular franchise for almost 20 years, stepped aside from his role in February after he defended former Bachelor contestant Rachel Kirkconnell, who was shown in photos attending an antebellum plantation-themed fraternity formal in 2018. Harrison made the comments defending Kirkconnell during an extra interview with former Bachelorette Rachel Lindsay. In his interview with Lindsay, Harrison expressed sympathy for Kirkconnell and implied that the criticism directed against her was unfair because the photos were from the past. When Lindsay said it was not a good look that Kirkconnell attended a party celebrating the antebellum South, a time period when slavery was still present, Harrison said, "Well, Rachel, is it a good look in 2018 or is it not a good look in 2021? Because there's a big difference." Hey Chris, yeah, it's not a good look ever. He later admitted he made a mistake and that he was seeking guidance from a race educator and strategist, which I'm not really sure what that person does. Alright, here's how we're not gonna be racist today. Number 8. Bill Maher. Bill has always been a man of controversy, literally hosting a show called Politically Incorrect for years before being cancelled in the early 2000s. He's since gone on to host his own show again called Real Time with Bill Maher, a show that may finally be getting the cancellation treatment thanks to Bill just being an absolute menace to society. Bill has shared a few controversial opinions on his talk show, but he's also spouted some pretty rough language saying words that nobody should ever say, especially the N-word, which he just casually threw around during a live exchange with the Senator of Nebraska, Ben Sasse, in 2017. He was immediately called out by millions of people begging for the cancellation of his show on HBO, but instead of canceling the show, HBO released a statement claiming that his language was inexcusable and tasteless, and then they just removed the word from the edited version. While his career as a talk show host hasn't really suffered, and there's plenty of terrible people to interview, his career as a comedian has gone nowhere but down the drain. Number 7. Joe Rogan. Joe was once the host of one of the most intense reality game shows of all time, Fear Factor. Right? Just mentioning that name makes me feel like I've got cockroaches crawling all around me. Seriously, whose idea was that? Eventually, Joe moved on from the world of live game shows and moved to live gladiator fights, aka UFC. As a sports commentator, Joe has been adored by fans, becoming a staple in the world of ultimate fighting. However, he also decided it would be an epic idea to start a podcast and invite everyone and anyone under the sun, including several fake doctors and media men, to spread lies to the world while fueling Joe's tiny ego. To make everything worse, Joe decided that since it was his show, he could say whatever he wanted, defending the situation surrounding the show's so-called misinformation. He is also one of those people who just casually likes to throw around the N-word when he feels like it's necessary. After saying too much on several episodes, Joe's career has been cemented as podcast host from now on. Like, if this man ever tries to rise, he's gonna fall hard into a pit of animal entrails. Seriously, why was Fear Factor a thing? Number 6. Sharon Osbourne. 2 years ago on the popular talk show The Talk, host Cheryl Underwood and Sharon Osbourne began to discuss the topic of racism amongst the recent firing of Sharon's personal friend Piers Morgan, also on this list, from Good Morning Britain over all the comments he made about the Duchess of Sussex. Sharon went off and began aggressively defending her friend, asking Cheryl what Piers said specifically that was racist. She then went on to say that she was being put into an electric chair, and due to her connection to Piers that she herself must also be racist. She went on to clarify that she did not support his comments per se, but that she did support his right to free speech. But like, he used that free speech to say messed up stuff, so maybe don't support him. She then asked Cheryl over and over again how she herself could be so racist. What has she done? What has she said? Well, Cheryl then signed off for a commercial break before Sharon let out some pretty choice expletives. When they returned, the tension almost seemed worse and the conversation continued to escalate. Eventually, Underwood was able to get her point across and calm Sharon down. However, the damage was done and the internet called for her immediate removal from the show. Number 5. James Corden. In one of the show's more popular bits, The Late Late Show had the Late Late lie detector. Corden asks his guests to hook up to a lie detector test and answer a series of questions on the air. During one segment of this bit, in which guest Kris Jenner was hooked up to the line, she was asked about her involvement in producing a certain tape with Kim. You know what I'm talking about. She was quick to roll her eyes and shake her head and say, "Oh no, no, no." And then the expert said, "True. Case closed." Nope, not even close, because the next day Kim Kardashian's ex-boyfriend Ray J blasted the show, calling the segment fake and claiming that the man giving the test, John, was underqualified. Going on to call the network sad for allowing this segment to be aired and threatening to sue Corden and the show itself. A little digging was done and it turned out that there was some truth to these claims, as John's LinkedIn profile revealed that he had attended an unspecified number of lie detector academies, which sounds super made up. It also said that he had a bachelor in law, but that he didn't actually really finish the course. Whether it was this moment or one of the many missteps in James's show's history, the entire thing got canceled and James is a liar stuck looking for work. Number 4. Ellen DeGeneres. Ellen had one of the most successful daytime talk shows of all time until 2020. Her show became overwhelmed with accusations of toxic work environment from former employees. They were claiming that Ellen's happy exterior was nothing more than a fake facade put in place to keep the audience on her team. A small bit of proof came when she accused 50 Shades of Grey actress Dakota Johnson of not inviting her to a birthday party a few months prior. Dakota reminded her that she had in fact sent an invitation but received a notice from producers that she did not want to attend. Fans began questioning this awkward moment and the cracks in her appearance started getting bigger and bigger. Eventually, an article was released containing testimonies from several former employees, and there were just too many stories for this thing to be made up. Ellen canceled herself by denying every single thing that she was being accused of, and instead of acknowledging her faults and missteps as a boss, she didn't respond as you may think with like a public apology though. Instead, she was forced to cancel both herself and her show amid the controversy and has since been on a hiatus. Number 3. Howard Stern. Stern may have just been one of the best talk show guests in the 1990s and the early 2000s. While he's still stellar when he actually allows someone to interview him, he particularly rocked it when he was at his most outrageous. This is because he'd come on and just take over. For instance, his favorite guy was Jay Leno. Today we're going to talk about one instance specifically on the Jay Leno show. Jay sat back as one of his guests attacked Howard's longtime co-host Robin Quivers during a segment on his show for her allegiance with the shock jock. Not only did this anger Robin, but Howard was irritated. Howard has accused Jay Leno of stealing his bits from his radio show, as well as a host of other problems. In fact, he has publicly called Jay a crook numerous times, even on his own talk show, which is kind of what landed him on this list, and his hatred for such a universally loved man most certainly made an impact on his status as a radio celebrity. He still has a podcast to this day, but thanks to him sitting behind the microphone all the time, the world just kind of moved on. Number 2. Charlie Sheen. Charlie rose to fame in the early 80s after starring in a slew of cult classic flicks like Red Dawn, The Boys Next Door, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off in a brief but memorable cameo. He fell into the mainstream in 2003 when he began playing the character Charlie Harper in the hit sitcom 2.5 Men. It was so good that even just mentioning it got that theme song stuck in your head. Anyway, sorry. However, in 2009 he was arrested for attempting to harm his wife Brooke Mueller on several occasions, and at the time of the arrest both parties had been indulging in adult beverages, with Sheen becoming enraged beyond control. Following this, a restraining order was placed prohibiting Sheen from being within 100 feet of both Brooke and their kids. Despite all the controversy, Charlie was later seen doing press for an upcoming movie on the Today Show when the interviewer asked Charlie what was behind his sudden behavior, claiming that he was being perceived as an angry and erratic man. Sheen responded with, No, it's my passion," before he launched into a no snow-fueled tirade. He claimed his brain functioned within a separate realm to ours. Charlie's interview was defensive to say the least, with his energy just being weird and aggressive the entire time. Ever since then, Charlie has maintained a strange air of arrogancy towards himself because he still thinks he's the king of TV and like winning, when in reality this is probably the first time you've heard about him in a while. And at number 1, Tom Cruise. Now, it's one thing to be asking people to join your church all the time, whatever, it's not a big deal, but Tom's behavior as a member of society has been rough tough to say the least. Following the announcement that he was engaged to Katie Holmes in the early 2000s, Tom appeared on an episode of The Oprah Winfrey Show that has gone down in history as one of the most chaotic TV interviews of all time. From the moment he walks on stage, he has this strange energy. He's oddly excited, like he just got told the best news in his entire life. He throws his arms up in the air, he rubs Oprah's shoulder like she's a lamp and he's trying to summon a genie. Tom jumped up on her couch, grabbed her hands over and over again. She couldn't even get her questions out that she had for him because he was just being so chaotic. Eventually, Oprah was like, whatever, just bring Katie out. And then the cameras followed Tom as he ran around the studio all Paranormal Activity style. The moment cemented Tom as a man with many hidden personalities. And while it hasn't really affected his work as an actor, ever since that day, whenever he is brought in for press or any kind of interviews, all entrances and exits must be locked at all times. Number 10, 1975. British band The 1975 have been ordered to pay $2.3 million in damages over their recent set at Malaysian music festival Good Vibes. The 1975's now infamous performance in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, on the 21st of July was cut short after Matt Healy criticized the country's anti-LGBTQ+ laws on stage and kissed his bassist Ross McDonald. Malaysia's Ministry of Communications and Digital subsequently cancelled the remaining 2 days of the festival. Earlier this week, the festival organizers, Future Sound Asia, or FSA, outlined its plan to seek financial damages from the 1975, although the $2.3 million figure was not disclosed at that time. A large component of FSA's letter of claim is attributed towards frontman Matt Healy's breach of contract. Apparently, Healy's representative categorically provided a pre-show written assurance that he and the 1975's live performances would adhere to all local guidelines and regulations during their set in Malaysia. And Malaysia do not condone public acts of love between two people of the same gender. Not only did Matty go against what the leaders of the country stood for, but according to members of the Malaysian LGBTQ+ community, they all agree that this political statement has only made things worse for everybody. Number 9. Colleen Ballinger. Allegations surrounding Ballinger's behavior with her fans first began in 2020 when YouTuber Adam McIntyre made a video claiming that the comedian had a personal relationship with him when he was just in his teens and she was in her 30s. He added that he would help her social media and he would be frequently put in uncomfortable situations, specifically noting that at one point, Ballinger sent him lingerie as a joke. At the time, Ballinger denied some of these allegations in a video, but the allegations resurfaced in 2023 when another YouTuber, Cody Rants, who defended Ballinger against McIntyre in 2020, alleged that Ballinger had privately shared screenshots of messages with McIntyre in a fan group chat. She also showed screenshots in her now deleted video in which Ballinger asked the group of fans their favorite position, among other inappropriate questions. In response, Ballinger uploaded an unusual 10-minute video to YouTube, choosing to address the allegations through a ukulele song. Needless to say, that's not how you're supposed to do that. So not only did people agree that she was definitely a groomer, but more and more information began to surface, and not only were all of her live shows cancelled, but she has also been cancelled entirely. Number 8. Lizzo. Thanks to some recent controversy in Lizzo's life, a series of performances have been cancelled, including one major concert, the Made in America Festival. At press time, when asked for further comment on what precipitated the cancellation of the event that was slated to take place on September 2nd and 3rd at Benjamin Franklin Parkway in Philadelphia, a spokesperson for promoter Live Nation pointed to the statement and they didn't provide any additional info. Though the statement did not cite any specific details about what caused the cancellation, the news came just days after Lizzo responded to a lawsuit from 3 of her former dancers, who alleged that the Truth Hurts rapper harassed her employees and created a hostile work environment. In a written statement in response to the suit, the Grammy winner insisted the claims were false allegations and sensational stories. There is almost no way that this is a coincidental cancellation, as not only was Lizzo set to be an act, but she was supposed to be the big act of the festival. Can't put someone on stage who likes bananas that much, I guess. Number 7. Tory Lanez. A Los Angeles jury found rapper Tory Lanez guilty of 3 felonies in the 2020 Pew Pew incident of hip-hop star Megan Thee Stallion that left her wounded with little fragments in her feet. Was arrested and charged with several felony counts in October 2020 following a public incident where he fired off a personal Pew Pew device. Weeks after his arrest, Megan Thee Stallion, whose real name is Megan Pete, went on Instagram Live to say that Lanez had aimed at her and caused significant damage. Despite denying these claims, the evidence was there. In October 2022, Lanez was ordered under house arrest and electronic monitoring, with Deputy District Attorney Alexander Bott arguing at the time that Lanez posed a danger to society and previously defied court orders to not come within 100 yards of Meghan. This of course meant any and all concerts that he had lined up were immediately cancelled, and while he has been on people's radar for a long time, the actual trial has been pushed back over and over again. But so far it's not looking good. Number 6. Travis Scott. In case you've forgotten, Travis was responsible for one of the worst concert tragedies in recent history. During his Astroworld event in Houston, 8 people passed away from accidental suffocation after a crowd surge took place. The entire audience rushed the stage, and the large outdoor event became a small outdoor oven. 2 more people passed away a few days later in hospital. He was facing a massive slew of charges following the event, but that did not stop him from trying to show up at another concert. In fact, he had already been booked to headline Coachella in 2022, but they had to let him go and replaced him following the massive amount of hate online. Not only was his Coachella concert cancelled, but a few months before, he was supposed to co-headline a festival called Day in Vegas with SZA and J. Cole, a show that was also cancelled thanks to the Astroworld tragedy. He has since returned to the stage, appearing at small venues and eventually performing at the 2022 Billboard Music Awards. Number 5. Nicki Minaj. Rapper Nicki Minaj is a superstar and certainly not one to shy away from how she feels. In 2019, she pulled out of a concert in Saudi Arabia to show support for women's rights, LGBTQ rights, and the freedom of expression. Minaj was due to headline the July 18th festival, billed as one of the biggest music events ever staged in the Middle East. The event took place at the King Abdullah Sports Stadium in Jeddah, with other scheduled performers, including former One Direction member Liam Payne and Steve Aoki. The Human Rights Foundation, in a letter, called on Minaj to call off her performance. The advocacy group cited Saudi Arabia's imprisonment and execution of, LGBTQ people, oppression of women, etc., all that fun stuff. Well, for one of the few times in human history, Minaj actually listened to the complaints. Not only was she receiving DMs left and right, but her moral views were being put into question. She came to her senses and pulled out of the venue. The foundation later released a statement praising Minaj for the decision and thanking her for the inspiration that it was surely going to bring. Number 4. Justin Bieber. Bieber postponed a slate of US dates on his Justice Tour in June 2022 after suffering from Ramsay Hunt syndrome, which partially paralyzed his face. The Ghost singer wasn't able to reschedule his summer run of US shows. Before canceling his shows, he had performed at a concert in Brazil when a sudden wave of exhaustion overtook him. He later released a statement saying, "After resting and consulting with my doctors, family, and team, I went to Europe in an effort to continue with this tour. I performed 6 live shows, but it took a very large toll on me, so I'm going to take a break from touring for the time being. I'm going to be okay." Well, he was right. His health has thankfully gotten better since, with his first return to the stage only being a few short months later. Number 3. Morgan Wallen. After the country singer canceled his second show at the University of Mississippi's Vaught Hemingway Stadium, fans were quick to question the true cause of the situation. Wallen was claiming it was due to a medical situation, but many were quick to point out that at his previous shows he seemed a little bit tipsy. The cancellation of this concert in particular came after the crowd had piled into the gym. Several thousand fans were already inside of that stadium, and some were sharing images from the event on social media as they awaited Wallen. Others said that they had been waiting inside the venue for like 3 or 4 hours for him to appear, only to be greeted by the disappointing message on the stadium screen. The message, of course, informing them that Wallen would not be performing, and the crowd was furious. But hey, this wouldn't be the first time Morgan was facing some kind of backlash. In fact, this recent slew of concerts comes only 2 years after he was caught using the N-word to describe one of his friends after a night out in Nashville. His music was pulled from radio, his record contract was suspended, and he was disqualified from that year's Academy of Country Music Awards. Number 2. Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle dominated the comedy scene in the 90s and the early 2000s. His stand-up was considered to be the most gut-busting and entertaining around, and his role in films like The Nutty Professor, Robin Hood Men in Tights, and the cult classic Half Baked cemented him in the comedy world. He took a bit of a break from starring in films to focus on his family and his true passion, stand-up comedy though. Despite being on stage for over 12 years, Dave never really learned how to follow suit with the times. He said there were certain topics that started becoming rude to joke about. Many jokes considered to be funny in the 80s and 90s haven't aged well, and unfortunately it seems like that's all the material that Dave has. In one of his last Netflix specials, Dave decided it was his time on stage to make fun of the LGBTQ+ community, spewing trashy jokes that are just not worth quoting or repeating. If you're actually curious how bad it was just enough to get Dave's fans to turn on him immediately. A slew of shows were cancelled, including a tour for his latest special that will never see the light of day. Maybe next time Dave will keep his rude comments where they belong, in a little journal under his bed. And at number 1, Madonna. Madonna is the original queen of pop. Her tunes have had us moving and grooving since her debut album released in 1983, simply titled Madonna. She is only 64 years old, and the reason that I'm putting her on this list of people who did bad at a concert was unfortunately due to the recent hospitalization she's going through. Madonna was set to begin a world tour until roughly a week ago, when her scheduled performances were suddenly cancelled. According to Madonna herself, the hospitalization comes from a battle with a serious bacterial infection. She was kept over a multi-day period, but has been released back into her home, where her family says she's been uncontrollably vomiting, basically being bedridden, but she has since stepped foot back into the world and she seems to be doing better. Apparently she had been suffering from a heavy fever for over a month before this, but had been able to push through. Suddenly that bacteria took hold and she was sent to the ICU. Thankfully she recovered after only a few days and she's back on her feet, but hopefully the concert tour will start up again very soon. Number 10, Macaulay Culkin. Having been in the acting industry since the age of 4, Culkin was only 9 when he starred in the first Home Alone movie and became a household name shortly afterwards. He was eventually named by VH1 in 2005 as the second greatest child actor of all time. Culkin was also nominated for a Golden Globe for his appearance in the iconic Christmas film. And he also won that year's Young Artist Award for Best Young Actor in a Film Role. Like, this dude, it was on an upward spiral. Culkin decided to leave the acting industry at the age of 14 in 1994, shortly after he appeared as the lead in Donald Petrie's comedy film Richie Rich. He took this step essentially because he felt tired of the industry and his parents' control over him. The Culkins do not have a great relationship with their father, Kit, who has 8 children, 2 of whom are no longer with us. Macaulay, for instance, has spoken about how he was very physical towards them growing up. In a 2019 profile with Esquire, Macaulay portrayed his father as a controlling bully who pushed his sons into the acting business because he just couldn't achieve success for himself. He told many people in his life and later in interviews that acting had become a chore instead of something that he enjoyed doing. He wanted a normal childhood, so he quit and made it happen. Thankfully, he has since returned to the acting world, most notably in season 10 of the FX series American Horror Story, and he's married to former Disney star Brenda Song. So things seem to work out in the end there. Number 9, Amanda Bynes. Amanda got her lucky break on the Nickelodeon sketch series All That. Eventually, the producers decided to offer Amanda her own show. Her success only grew from there, and the Amanda Bynes show became one of Nickelodeon's most watched series, and she was picked up by several studios to star in non-Nickelodeon projects like She's the Man and Easy A. But Amanda took a hiatus in 2013 following a very public mental breakdown. According to Amanda, she had become addicted to the devil's lettuce at a young age, and while it wasn't an addiction at first, with more roles came more pressure and a need to find a new way to cope. This eventually led her to more drastic substances. In 2013, Amanda posted a series of bizarre tweets where she seemed to be insulting everybody that she could think of. She even called the former President Barack Obama's wife ugly, clearly referencing a character from The Amanda Show, but it's still pretty harsh. She was arrested and placed under psychiatric hold as she was accused of several hit-and-run incidents and was officially charged with reckless endangerment and criminal possession of herbs and spices. Her parents then placed her under a conservatorship until 2022, when she stood in front of a judge, healthier and better than ever. Number 8, Ke Huy Quan. Ke Huy Quan is one of 2 Goonies on this list, playing the character Data in the 1985 classic. He was also short round in the Indiana Jones movies, delivering some iconic one-liners and cementing himself as a legend in the world of child acting. Around the end of 1991, he decided to take a break from the acting world as the fame and fortune was slowly becoming too stressful. He took a break from acting for over 20 years before making a triumphant return to the silver screen in 2022's Everything Everywhere All at Once as Waymond, the lovable universe-jumping husband. In fact, he was so good in that role, he received the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, delivering a tearful speech that I really can't talk about because I'm gonna try to. Number 7, Lil Tay. Lil Tay is a rapper, and according to the photos that pop up when you Google her, it looks like she has a phone made from $100 bills. I'm not sure what that's about. Recently, she popped up in the news after someone shared the information that herself and her brother had passed away. This took the internet by storm, and her fans were devastated. However, it turns out that she is still very much alive, and in a statement given to TMZ from Tay's family, she made it perfectly clear that she is safe and still kicking, and she said the last 24 hours had been particularly rough. Apparently, her Instagram account was hacked by some third party, and they used it to spread misinformation and just straight up rumors. But much like me, these guys didn't know how to spell stuff, so the first clue was that her name was literally misprinted several times. What's still unclear is why it took Tay 24 hours to get word out that she was alive, especially because she says she was aware that her account was hacked and was getting phone calls about her passing. She got got famous as being one of the world's youngest flexers, literally making money by pretending to have money on the internet. But she stopped doing that in 2018 after receiving so much online hate. And that's why many people were confused why her account had posted this announcement when it had been so inactive for so long. Number 6. Lindsay Lohan. Lindsay is a jack of all trades. She acts, she sings, she dances, she writes, and she's even the queen of her own business empire. Now, despite all of this though, this former Disney star and Hollywood bad girl has a net worth of like $500,000. Well, that is apparently because she loves to take nice long vacations, like all of the time. Lohan has been forced to declare bankruptcy a few times, and as we know, she fell out of the mainstream and started a very public battle with substance control, basically quitting the acting world forever because she just got too into the partying lifestyle. This left Lindsay in the 600-figure range, making her poor by Hollywood standards. Eventually, this young child actor entered rehab and kicked their bad habits right into oncoming traffic. It wasn't until she posed for Playboy and opened up about her life on Oprah Winfrey's talk show that her finances began to stabilize, she started getting more roles again, so here's hoping that we get that Freaky Friday sequel we've all been waiting for. Number 5. Jeff Cohen. Jeff's name may not be familiar to you, but his most iconic and only acting role certainly is. Jeff played Chunk in the much-loved classic adventure flick The Goonies. Chunk was one of the many young actors in search of the treasure of One-Eyed Willie, so they could save their small seaside neighborhood from being bulldozed to the ground. And this movie has aged like a fine wine. It just gets better and better the older you get. Jeff stole the show and truly stood out among the ensemble who could forget his notorious interrogation scene? That dude almost got his hand blended. Following the success of the movie, many were under the impression that he was going to have a long, successful career. While his co-stars went to star in franchises like Lord of the Rings and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Jeff decided to go the opposite direction and he quit acting entirely. Unfortunately, he was being pegged as a chubby actor, so that's exactly what people were trying to cast him in. And rather than give him room to grow and breathe, studios were just trying to typecast him as this big nerdy dude in every single project. He found it difficult to secure work, and it was unfortunately puberty that secured his fate. He was going from chunk to hunk, according to an interview with the Daily Mail, and eventually he realized that it just made sense to give up for now and try something else. So that is exactly what he did. He went to school, focused on his mental health, and he got a degree in law. And now he works out of a law firm that he co-founded with his business partner, Cohen Gardner. So good for you, Jeff. Number 4. Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. Mary-Kate and Ashley were once the stars of their own show back in the day, and they made several movies together like Double Double, Toil and Trouble, and New York Minute. Now around 2005, these two suddenly stopped making movies or TV appearances out of the blue. It turns out that they had been fed up with the movie business. Not just that, but the amount of toxic men in the field really came to light. Apparently they were being harassed or mistreated all the time at a very young age. It's no wonder that they hated most of their time on set. Since stepping away from the movie industry, the twins launched a fashion brand called The Row, a company that has won several awards, even taking home the highest honor of the Council of Fashion Designers of America. Gee, that sounds like a fashion Illuminati to me. Probably some pretty comfy robes though. Number 3. Barrett Oliver. The Never-Ending Story was a staple in many childhoods. Filled with magic and mystery, this film was dropped in our lives in 1984 and featured some of the most beautiful practical effects ever put to screen, and some really weird puppets. The main character of the story is Bastian, a young man who finds a book about the world of Fantasia. Now we only see Barrett as the narrator a few times over the course of the film, but in the final act he is whisked into the world of Fantasia. Barrett starred in a handful of projects in the 1980s, but following 1985's Cocoon, Barrett decided to stop acting. The success of the film Never-Ending Story was causing him trouble at school. Kids would be making fun of him and they actually called him Fur Boy. It was not fun. So he decided to quit acting and focused on another career. Oliver now works as a photographer and printer, specifically antique photos. So if you see a man with a long black beard and dreadlocks asking you for a photo on the boardwalk, it might be the kid from the Never-Ending Story. Number 2. Peter Ostrom. From the moment he walked into the room, talent agents immediately knew that Peter was the perfect pick to play Charlie Buckets after seeing him partake in theater productions in Ohio. The young talent and his co-stars began filming in Munich in the summer of 1970 as he was approaching the 7th grade. The film was released in June 1971 and is still considered to be a classic in the world of cinema. It's personally been giving me joy and scaring the life out of me since I was a young lad. Following the success of the film, you'd think Peter would have continued to act, but instead he decided to step down and focus on his true passion, being a veterinarian. That's right, if you live in New York, there is a very good chance that Charlie frickin' Buckets had your cat spayed or neutered. In recent years, he has told interviewers and fans that the movie business just wasn't for him. Number 1. Jake Lloyd. Jake was the little boy that became a Sith Lord, playing young Anakin Skywalker in Star Wars Episode 1. While his character eventually becomes Darth Vader, Lloyd's personal life would turn out to be just as rough. Following the release of the film, Jake was actually picked on relentlessly by both his peers and Star Wars fans. He grew up with people hating him in public settings and cursing his name whenever Episode 1 was even mentioned. Seriously, Star Wars fans are just plain mean, man. Jake eventually decided to quit acting for good and save himself from any more public backlash. All that hate seemed to stick with Jake over the years though, as he had become more and more violent in the public eye, and he was becoming well known for being short-tempered. In 2015, police chased the 26-year-old Lloyd for 25 miles before he crashed off the side of a road on Interstate 95 in South Carolina. He wasn't intoxicated at the time, but after being arrested and sent for a psychiatric evaluation, it was concluded that the young actor had just been suffering from schizophrenia and he was held for treatment. Thankfully, currently Jake is in a much better place mentally speaking, but his career will unfortunately never recover. Number 10. The hypocrisy. Lizzo may have been a public advocate for body positivity, but as part of the lawsuit being brought against her, it seems like all of that positivity may have just been some act that she was putting on to make herself more universally loved. Now, I am not a small man. In fact, I have what many people consider to be a dad bod, and I'm cool with it. So I'm not dismissing the notion that we should love and respect ourselves, but like, she made it a massive part of her personality on camera when it sounds like the only body she actually cared about was her own. According to her dancers, Lizzo regularly shamed her team and made them feel that they were too large or gaining weight, with several dancers confirming these allegations. Liz made several posts over the years spreading the positive body image, but now she's being called out for being a massive hypocrite, which she 100% is. That's like the government telling you not to do something when they just do it anyway. They would never do that, right? Number 9. The leaked meeting. One of the dancers, Crystal Davies, who was a part of the lawsuit, was fired for secretly recording a meeting between herself and Lizzo. The meeting was about the dancer's performance on stage recently and Lizzo's apparent dislike of the weight that she had been gaining, claiming that she wasn't committing to her role. Initially, Davies only planned on recording the conversation for personal reasons. She has a condition that leaves her disoriented sometimes, and she wanted a backup on the off chance that she forgot what the meeting was about. After it was discovered that the audio recording existed, the dancer was promptly fired, apparently being pulled into a meeting just to get yelled at before they let her go, not even giving her a chance to speak. Lizzo exacting her star power to simply end the career of one of her main backup dancers is insane and is most certainly worth the lawsuit coming her way. Number 8. Her party lifestyle. One key factor of this lawsuit being brought against Lizzo is the place in which all these accusations went down. Lizzo was at a club in Amsterdam's red light district when she coerced, aka forced, one of her dancers to touch a woman's bare chest, despite saying several times that it was not something that she wanted to do. Facts are, this actually isn't the first time that Lizzo has been seen living it up at the club. Over the past few years, she's been known to be a regular party girl, spending a solid amount of time between touring to have just a good time and celebrate her success. But the amount in which she has been partying, despite being such an advocate for positivity, is wild. For someone who shares this message of loving yourself, she sure likes to drink the no-no juice, not to mention throwing her money around at every chance she gets. Nobody wants to talk about it, but that night in Amsterdam probably cost them a fortune. I don't know, I've never been. Moving on. Number 7. She made the dancers eat fruit. Alright, let's get into this Amsterdam situation. According to the lawsuit, Lizzo coerced her dancers to go out with her to a nightclub in the city's red light district. And once they arrived at the club, it was brought to their attention that the club encouraged dancers to wear their birthday suits. Dancers would also perform special shows in which they would launch things from their catapults. Nope, I don't like that one. Lizzo's team were encouraged to catch the launched items, which included various adult objects, and at one point the dancers were apparently encouraged to eat bananas that had been protruding from their fruit baskets. No, that's worse somehow. But that wasn't even the worst of it. Lizzo then told her crew to come with her to a club in Paris that was specifically filled with servers and staff wearing nothing at all. All the dancers were shocked and they were robbed of their choice to not attend. I think we can all agree being handed your food by someone in nothing but kitchen shoes sounds pretty uncomfortable. This is when Lizzo had heavily encouraged dancer Miss Davies to touch one performer on her chest, which she clearly did not want to do, but her boss yelled at her and told her to do it, so you know how that goes. Just an overall weird night, and I'm not even mildly shocked that someone came forward to call this out. Shady. Number 6. The dance captain. Lizzo is not the only person being named in this lawsuit. Her dance captain, Shirlene Quigley, is also facing a slew of accusations. According to the suit, Quigley shared lewd physical fantasies with dancers and the crew, and publicly discussed the purity of one performer while simultaneously berating all other dancers who had premarital relations. Now, sharing your beliefs is one thing, but trying to jam them down the throat of your employees, that's not a great move. According to several dancers from the past few years, whenever this woman was around, she was a nightmare, not only spouting her religious beliefs at anyone who had ears, but also attempting to convert several of the crew members. Quigley is being named personally in this lawsuit for creating a hostile work environment, having extreme racial biases, discrimination towards disabled employees, and a failure to prevent or remedy the situation. Number 5. Lizzo tried to distract us. Lizzo is just like the rest of the world. When she's had a few too many adult beverages, she's unable to keep her hands off her phone. According to a TikTok post from earlier this year, though, Lizzo admitted to sliding into Captain America star Chris Evans' DMs. She had apparently sent him emojis of dashing away, women playing handball, and a basketball. Now, I'm no detective, but was this supposed to be like, "I'm coming to you, Chris, balls in your court"? Who knows what she meant. But to follow up that message, she released a TikTok in which she lip-synced to an audio clip. You know, that thing that makes people tons of money for doing absolutely nothing on an app. I was going to quote it, but I can't physically type things from TikTok because my brain starts to twitch, so it's my least favorite app in the world right now, and that includes Flappy Bird. The fact that she openly admitted to not only overindulging in no-no juice, but also directly suggesting that Chris's butt, his ball is in her net. I don't know what the emojis mean. Many fans believe she brought this to their attention to save some face when the official lawsuit was released, possibly knowing that this was coming for quite some time. Number 4. Her TV show. Now, Watch Out for the Big Girls is a TV show that only recently came into my life thanks to doing research for this video. The series premiered last year and follows Lizzo as she hunts for confident women to join her world tour as dancers. In fact, among the many cast members on the show were 2 of the 3 plaintiffs in this case, Ariana Davies and Crystal Williams. The show is just one of the many tactics that she seems to have used to make herself look better when the truth got revealed. Despite the show being a search for new talent, it turned into some kind of like a shield that she could use. How could Lizzo be so mean when she had a whole show dedicated to giving people jobs? Well, following the news of the suit, many people have called to question why Lizzo would work on the project when she's such an advocate for body positivity. Well, with no word from Lizzo yet as to her side of this story, the world is quickly canceling her from society, and we may just end up having to add her to our top 10 destroyed careers of 2023. Number 3. The hostile work environment. Lizzo created an extremely hostile work environment according to the plaintiffs, with several examples that have been backed up by former dancers and even some people involved with the documentary that she was trying to get off the ground. According to the plaintiffs, Lizzo made them work ridiculous hours, including up to 12-hour rehearsal days, and one of the dancers recounted an experience of having to use the washroom and being forced to do it in her pants while rehearsing so that she didn't lose any time. Like, Lizzo, if someone has to use the bathroom, let them go. Yeah, just let them go. It took longer for them to get the poor woman a new change of clothes than it would have taken her to go take 5, you know? Like, next time just let them pee. Let them pee in peace. In fact, as a form of humiliation on the part of Lizzo and her dance coach, they made Davies wear a see-through garment with nothing underneath and finish her day in front of the entire crew. Now, if that is not the definition of a toxic workplace, I'm not sure what is. Number 2. Claimed that the dancers were drinking. Lizzo has made many claims regarding the women involved in this case, but one of the most outlandish is the idea that the backup dancers were indulging in no-no juice before every show. Lizzo claimed that the backup crew was lacking in energy, simply going with the motions and getting off the stage quickly as possible. This caused Lizzo to accuse several of the dancers on her team of party-hardying before they were supposed to do their jobs. Dancer Crystal Williams spoke out against the claim immediately, reminding Lizzo about the 12-hour rehearsal days and constant mental strain from working beneath her, being a contributing factor to the so-called dip in energy. Trying to claim that your crew has been slacking when they have the receipts? It's a bad move on Lizzo's part and will surely be one of the several reasons that she's cancelled this year. Number 1. She has said nothing. By far the shadiest thing of all, and the thing taking the top spot on this list, is the fact that Lizzo has said nothing about this at all, and it's not to say that she isn't aware of the suit. In fact, she posted on Instagram 3 separate times on the day that the news broke, but it had nothing to do with the lawsuit. Not only does that mean that she had her phone and was very very capable of reading the news, but that she blatantly ignored the possibly thousands of comments and messages she is surely receiving. When something like this happens, it's important that the person being accused of the misdeeds to come forward and either fess up or deny everything. There's no in between. Being silent is the worst thing that you can do. It gives the internet more time to circulate negative stuff, and eventually it'll take over anything good that you try to do and will land you in a realm where no one can hear your screams or cries. Now, Lizzo could very well be taking her sweet time to draft up a proper statement so she doesn't actually say something wrong that the court can use later. Makes sense, because let's face it, this is about to be a rough few months for this woman. I'd wish her luck, but like a lot of people have backed up everything that's being said, so yeah. She was born Jenna Marie Ortega on September 27th, 2002 in Coachella Valley, California. From a young age, Jenna has been in the spotlight and only spent a few years in grade school before getting her first critically acclaimed performance as a younger version of the titular Jane in the series Jane the Virgin from 2014. But like many young actors, Ortega got her first regular series gig on the Disney Channel. She got it on the show called Stuck in the Middle, where she portrayed Harley Diaz, the middle child of 6 siblings. It was one of those shows where the main character would break the fourth wall and address the audience to share their childlike wisdom with the viewers around the world. Now, while the show wasn't the most popular in the world, she herself won an Imagine Award for Best Young Actor in Television for her performance in 2018. Being a child star meant that she didn't have a normal educational experience, often regretting never actually attending a normal high school or experiencing the traditions that come with it. Filming a scene set at a prom versus going to an actual prom are two very different things. Despite this, Ortega has been able to power through and has maintained a steady stream of work ever since her Disney days, on both the small and big screen. In recent years, she stepped into the horror genre, and many fans have accepted her with open claws. Her most memorable role was in the slasher flick X, in which a group of actors making a movie that is not safe for work in rural Texas are caught by the owner of what they assumed was an abandoned farm, and the crew begin a fight for their lives. She was also recently responsible for reviving the much-loved Scream franchise in 2020 and its sequel in 2023. With roles like this and a passion to perform, it only makes sense that Jenna should be given a show. 8 episodes to showcase her talent in a dark and creative space. Enter Wednesday. The character of Wednesday Addams first creeped into existence in 1946 thanks to the wild and wacky mind of one Charles Addams. That's right, Tim Burton didn't create the concept for the show, and if you didn't know that, wait till you Google who made The Nightmare Before Christmas. The Addams Family first started as a series of cartoons published in The New Yorker, which is a famous news outlet, in the 1940s. The cartoons followed the adventures of a creepy family who find themselves in wacky and fun situations. For 20 years, Charles brought that family's dark and twisted sense of humor to the readers at home, and he garnered quite the fan base because of it. In 1964, a multicam sitcom was produced to bring the Addams Family to life and right to your family at home. In the first iterations of the cartoon, the family had no names or specific character traits per se, so the show gave writers a chance to develop new characters based on an existing property. The show premiered on September 18th in 1964, and the rest is history. The world was introduced to Mother Morticia Addams, Father Gomez Addams, son Pugsley Addams, Grandma Addams, who never actually has a name, and the family's 7-foot-tall butler Lurch, and of course, the devious daughter herself, Wednesday Addams. The show was hailed for its family dynamic and weird but fun style of humor that it presented to viewers. It ran for 64 episodes for just over 2 years, which was a pretty big deal in the 1960s. Eventually, the series was rebooted into 2 live-action films from the late 1990s that many people watching this video may remember best, because they were fantastic. And if you haven't seen those movies, pause this video right now and go find them. Mamushka! Mamushka! Since then though, the property has changed hands a few times, with some rough live-action reboots of both the movie and the show in the early 2000s, as well as an animated film reboot of the franchise in 2019, which, yeah, let's just not get into that one. But the Netflix masterminds finally found a golden nugget nugget when they not only bought the rights to the Addams Family, but they hired the king of the comedically macabre, Tim Burton himself, to produce and direct. Tim is famous for movies like Beetlejuice, Corpse Brides, Mars Attacks. Okay, he's not famous for that last one, but he really should be because it's freaking wild. Tom Jones fights an alien in Las Vegas. Just saying, if that doesn't make you want to watch that, I don't know what will. Burton was beyond excited to take the job and found his Wednesday in Jenna Ortega. Jenna was Tim's first choice from the get-go to play Wednesday after seeing her stint in the horror genre, as well as her comedic abilities from her Disney days. Jenna accepted the position and has portrayed the character for only one season of the show so far, but oh boy was it a good one. Literally, the series focused on the titular character as she moves to a new school filled with misfits and monsters, and as it turns out, mystery! Oh yeah, and in the show, Wednesday gets like psychic visions or something like that sometimes. It's kind of like That's So Raven, only Wednesday like collapses to the ground and Raven just kind of stares at you. Regardless, the show was the perfect mix between mystery thriller and dark comedy, and it had wonderful mystery elements. They were so well done that myself and the people watching the show with me enjoyed all 8 episodes in succession at midnight. It was a bad idea, but so worth it. The show premiered #1 on Netflix, not just in Canada, but in the entire world. It stayed at that #1 spot for 5 weeks, and in that time smashed Netflix viewership records and became the second most watched show on the platform, just barely pulling up behind Stranger Things. The show was renewed for a second season only 2 weeks after the final episode was released. That season may take some time to get off the ground, however, due to the current writer's strike taking place in the States, as well as some choice comments made by the actor in reference to her Wednesday screenwriters. Throughout production on Wednesday, Ortega had reportedly been uncomfortable filming some of the scenes that were written for her character and would regularly change the parameters of the script. One of the most glaring flaws in the Wednesday series, I think we can all agree, is its decision to focus on a love triangle between Ortega, a boy at her school who is a misfit, and a normie boy in the town nearby who, spoiler alert, is also a misfit. He's some kind of like Jekyll Hyde weird monster thing. It heavily distracted from the point of the show and tried to make us care about something that the character of Wednesday wouldn't even care about herself. This is why Ortega made several comments to the writing team and was quoted as saying that she would punch up the script more often than she expected to. She cut several lines that made no sense for the character and altered the overall love triangle storyline to help focus more on Wednesday and her friends. Jenna fought the writers back and forth on the issue, but she won that battle as it was discovered by the team working for season 2 that the show would drop that concept entirely. No more love triangles. We're gonna focus more on Wednesday's Nancy Drew-like escapades with some Addams Family flair mixed in. Unfortunately, even the smallest comment can be used to fuel the flames of anger, as several signs among the Writers Guild picket line are covered in quotes from Ortega and slogans, including one that says, "Without writers, Jenna Ortega will have nothing to punch up." While a large portion of writers find her comments and input to have been a negative move in their eyes, many writers have also gone the opposite route and have claimed Jenna as one of their own, claiming that punch-ups are still writing too, with one person even tweeting Jenna Ortega better get back from New York for her afternoon shift on the picket line. The writers' strike is entering its second week of protesting after beginning on May 1st. The last time a major writers' strike took place like this was in 2007, and that protest went on for 100 days, costing the film industry nearly $2 billion. With fury and frustration surely looming on the streets, Jenna's comments, while more than likely playful, have been used to get a point across to the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Production. The main focus point of the strike is the residuals and streaming of media. The AMPTP, they really need to work on that acronym. Share of the residuals from streaming platforms like Amazon and Netflix has cut much of the writer's average income compared to a decade ago. They also ask that artificial intelligence platforms like ChatGPT should only be used as a research tool to help facilitate new script ideas and not as a replacement for them entirely. The demands are very understandable, as you can't replace the art that a human being can produce with AI garbage that's just mashed together for you to pick apart and edit. Unfortunately, having Jenna's name on this sign means that her name is now being used in a negative way, and she could be caught up in a strike that she didn't even start. With the strike comes a massive pause in filming, leaving not just the writers out of work, but the actors and crew as well. Was Wednesday's first season going to be its last, and will the dragging of Jenna's comments through the media mud be enough to officially ruin her career?